Atelier 12.
Das heutige Kapitel heißt Filmgeschichte. Filmgeschichte beinhaltet Kurzbeiträge, mittellange Beiträge, die uns aus der Geschichte der laufenden Bilder was erzählen. Zuerst waren es ja nur laufende Bilder und noch keine laufenden Töne. Später kamen die Töne, kamen die Musik, kamen die Geräusche dazu. Der erste Beitrag aus diesem Blog Filmgeschichte heißt Kommunales Kino 1912. Es wird niemand glauben, aber es ist so, das erste kommunale Kino war in Wanne-Eickel, ausgerechnet in Wanne-Eickel, und zwar im Jahr 1912 gestartet worden. Es hieß allerdings noch nicht Kommunales Kino, sondern es hieß Gemeindeeigenes Lichtspielhaus. Gemeindeeigenes Lichtspielhaus. Ich liebe das. Und es erzählt die Geschichte dieses Hauses anhand von Archivfunden und Zeitungsnotizen, und wir erzählen die Geschichte dieser Institution in Wanne-Eickel. Der zweite Beitrag aus diesem Blog Filmgeschichte trägt den Titel Töne und Schatten und erzählt die Geschichte einer französischen Stummfilmserie aus den Jahren 1916-17, Le Vampire, die Vampire, und die Entstehung der Filmmusik im Jahr 1989, als ein Freund von mir, Komponist Wolfgang Hahn, vom WDR beauftragt wurde, für diese Serie, ein Zehnteiler, eine neue Musik zu komponieren. Und ich habe die Produktion der Filmmusik im Studio beobachtet und dokumentiere bis zur fertigen Fassung mit einigen Ausschnitten aus den kombinierten Stummfilmen mit der neuen Musik. Töne und Schatten, Musik für die Vampire. Der folgende Beitrag trägt den etwas unscharfen Titel Because. Because. Der Beitrag zeigt eine Pressekonferenz in Köln, ich glaube es war 1996, als Michelangelo, Antonioni und Wenders ihren gemeinsamen Film Jenseits der Wolken in Köln vorgestellt haben. Es war insofern bedrückend und tragisch, als Antonioni damals schon von einem Schlaganfall gekennzeichnet war und nicht mehr sprechen konnte, aber zeichnen konnte und deuten konnte und immer noch inszeniert hat, mit Hilfe von Wenders, aus versicherungstechnischen Gründen. Und sie haben gemeinsam diesen Film in Köln vorgestellt, mit Schauspielerinnen, die ebenfalls anwesend waren. Because bezieht sich darauf, dass Wenders von Antonioni wissen wollte, warum er ihn als Backup-Regisseur, also als Sicherheits-zweiten Regisseur gewählt hat. Und die Antwort von Antonioni sei gewesen, because. Ich deute das als because, sei die Ursache, sei der Grund, sei der Helfer, der mir ermöglicht, auf meine alten Tage noch einen Film zu realisieren. Jenseits der Wolken. Und der letzte Teil des Blogs Filmgeschichte ist ein längeres Interview mit der Dokumentarfilmlegende Richard Leacock. Richard Leacock. Ein Engländer, der in Amerika Karriere gemacht hat und zum Cinema Verité oder zur Living Camera ganz wesentlich beigetragen hatte. Er war es auch, der die kleinen 16 mm Kameras gebrimmt hat und dafür die Möglichkeit der Kameras und der Tonaufnahmen gesorgt hat. Also ein Pionier der Filmgeschichte und ein großartiger Dokumentarist, Richard Leacock. So viel zum Blog Filmgeschichte.
Um 1912 war es, als sich das erste kommunale Kino etablierte. Hier in unserem Land, in Wanne-Eickel, um es ganz genau zu sagen, im Stadtteil Eickel. Und diese Alternative zum gewerblichen Kino braucht sich über Zuschauermangel nicht zu beklagen. Heinz Trenczak hat bei seiner Recherche zum folgenden Beitrag eine ganze Reihe von erstaunlichen Dokumenten aufgestöbert. Und er hat versucht, auch optisch einen Bogen zu schlagen von diesem kommunalen Kino um 1912 bis in unsere Tage.
Das ganze Volkswohl ist in Gefahr. Und an alle Menschenfreunde ergeht der Ruf: kommt und helft das Kino reformieren.
Der Kinematograph ist zum Theater des kleinen Mannes geworden. Niemand kann sich dem Banne dieses Zauberspiels entziehen.
Der Kinematograph stillt den Bildungshunger des inneren Menschen.
Die Verwertung des Kinematographen muss gefördert werden durch Aufklärung in Wort und Schrift, durch Resolutionen, durch Zensur und Konzessionspflicht und durch Einrichtung von Reformkinos.
So lauteten Kommentare und Aufrufe zur Eröffnung des ersten Gemeindekinos in Deutschland, 1912 im Ruhrgebiet in Eickel. Zuletzt Atrium, vorher Schauburg genannt, wurde es als Lichtspielhaus Eickel am 30. November 1912 mit dem Film Mütter verzaget nicht eröffnet und bot 700 Plätze. Schon ein Jahr später, 1913, berichtete die Zeitschrift Lichtbildbühne von einer breiten Gemeinde- und Reformkinobewegung und erinnert sich.
Es war ein kulturgeschichtlicher Augenblick, als sich der in einem Lichtermeer erstrahlende Saal verdunkelte und das erste Bild auf der Leinwand des ersten Gemeindelichtspielhauses erschien. Ein neuer Zweig gemeindlicher Verwaltung war entstanden.
Für 80.000 Reichsmark hatte die Gemeinde einen Saal am Eickeler Markt gekauft und zum Kino- und Veranstaltungssaal umbauen lassen. Die Eintrittspreise lagen zwischen 25 und 80 Pfennig. Amtmann Berkermann, der Initiator des ersten Gemeindekinos, konnte schon nach einem halben Jahr 30.000 Zuschauer verzeichnen. 1912 hatte Eickel 34.000 Einwohner. Der Nebenhaushaltsplan verzeichnet Gehälter für Kassiererin, Klavierspieler, Portier und Aufseher. Der Vorführer verdiente 2.160 Reichsmark im Jahr und war zugleich für die Straßenbeleuchtung zuständig. Der Schichtlohn eines Bergarbeiters betrug 4,83 Mark und für 1 Mark bekam man damals 6 Pfund Brot. Ganz links im Bild der damalige Kinoeingang. Von dort im Zeitsprung zur Situation 84.
Versuche, würde ich sagen, das kommunale Kino hat 2 Hauptaufgaben. An einem bestimmten Ort, das heißt ja auch kommunales Kino, die Filme zu zeigen, zugänglich zu machen, die im gewerblichen Kino, Programmkinos sind ja auch gewerbliche Filmtheater, nicht zu sehen sind. Und zweitens, Filme anders zu zeigen als gewerbliche Filmtheater, Filme nicht einfach abzuspulen und einen Film nach dem anderen durch den Projektor zu jagen, um die Kinokapazitäten kommerziell möglichst gut zu nutzen, sondern Filme zu vermitteln, sowohl neue Filme als auch Filme in thematischen Zusammenhängen und dann vor allem natürlich in filmhistorischen Zusammenhängen, also Diskussionen, Einführungen, thematische Filmreihen, filmhistorische Seminare sind unabdingbar für kommunale Filmarbeit.
Ich bekomme Filme zum Beispiel aus Filmarchiven in geringerem Maße. Ich bekomme Filme von Botschaften. Ich bekomme Filme aus Filmpaketen, die bestimmte kommunale Kinos zusammengestellt haben. Um nur mal ein Beispiel zu nennen, ein aktuelles Beispiel. 5 kommunale Kinos in der Bundesrepublik werden das Animationsfilmstudio Krakau nachspielen, das sich auf den Kurzfilmtagen in Oberhausen vorstellen wird. Und das geht dann, und die Filmemacher sind hier, die Filme sind hier, und die gehen dann auf Tournee, eine Woche später quasi, jeden Tag am anderen Ort. Duisburg, Dortmund, Düsseldorf, Hannover, Hamburg. Und das sind natürlich Geschichten, die nicht im normalen Verleihbetrieb anfallen, sondern das sind so Sondersachen und die können auch nur in kommunalen Kinos stattfinden. Also so eine Sache würde kein gewerbliches Kino machen.
Heute existieren allein in Nordrhein-Westfalen 16 nicht gewerbliche Spielstellen, von Gemeinden getragen, an Volkshochschulen angebunden, als Jugendclubs oder eingetragene Vereine. Als 1971 gegen den entschiedenen Widerstand kommerzieller Filmtheater das kommunale Kino in Frankfurt durchgesetzt werden konnte, erinnerte man sich kurz an Eickel und 1912. Um die Jahrhundertwende beherrschten französische, italienische und dänische Filme den Markt. In die Forderung nach mehr deutschen Filmen mischten sich bald patriotische, ja vor dem Ersten Weltkrieg auch militaristische Töne. Das Eickeler Beispiel führte rasch zu ähnlichen Aktivitäten in anderen Orten des Ruhrgebiets, in Bottrop, Osterfeld und Hagen, in Dortmund, Hattingen und Schwelm. Aber schon 1919 wurde das Eickeler Gemeindekino privatisiert. Heute gibt es am Eickeler Markt keine Spuren des Lichtspielhauses mehr zu sehen.
Ich würde schon sagen, dass im Moment die größten Schwierigkeiten für alle kommunalen Kinos einfach in der Konkurrenz der Programmkinos bestehen. Das muss man wirklich historisch verstehen, dass ja noch bis Ende der 70er Jahre, kann man sagen, viele kommunale Kinos, darunter auch hier das kommunale Kino Dortmund, Filme gespielt haben, auch mit einer entsprechend großen Resonanz, die jetzt heute natürlich in den Programmkinos laufen. Was auch gut ist, weil sie da eine viel größere Auswertungsmöglichkeit haben. Die können Filme über mehrere Wochen spielen. Ich kann einen Film oft nur ein- oder zweimal spielen. Das halte ich auch für sehr gut. Nur hat es natürlich für die kommunalen Kinos, ja, kann man sagen, Umstellungsschwierigkeiten gebracht, dass sie sehr viel heute anbieten und anbieten müssen, was natürlich nicht mehr so viel Zuschauer wie früher bringt. Das muss man also ganz deutlich sehen. Und das in einer Zeit, wo natürlich Argumente wie Einnahmen, Zuschauerzahlen natürlich noch etwas mehr zählen als noch vor 5, 6 Jahren. Ne?
Ich muss sagen, auch hier in Nordrhein-Westfalen besteht ein bisschen die Gefahr, vor dem Hintergrund der ökonomischen Spannungen und Krisensituationen, die ja vor allem auch wohl die Kultur trifft, dass man sagt, da kann sehr kurzsichtig sagt, da kann sehr viel übernommen werden nun vom gewerblichen Bereich, vom kommerziellen Bereich. Kommunale Kinos müssen nicht mehr so gut ausgestattet sein. Und im Windschatten, würde ich fast sagen, dieser großen Wende in der ganzen Republik besteht auch die Gefahr, dass Kultur und vor allem Medienarbeit, Filmarbeit auch hier im Lande gefährdet, beeinträchtigt, gemindert wird. Ich würde das für sehr fatal halten. Ich meine, gerade der Erfolg auch von Programmkinos und von der kommerzielle Erfolg von anspruchsvolleren Filmen in letzter Zeit, der gelegentlich doch stärker zu beobachten war als vor 5, 6, 7 Jahren, der bestätigt die Notwendigkeit der Arbeit, kommunaler Filmarbeit, kommunaler Kinos und musste sie zur Weiterarbeit, zur noch intensiveren Weiterarbeit anregen, wozu sie natürlich die entsprechende personelle und finanzielle Ausstattung benötigen.
Schon seit Februar 89 liefen die Vorarbeiten. Recherchen in Paris, eine erste improvisierte Fassung, das Komponieren und die Reinschrift. Jetzt liegt eine 150 Seiten Partitur vor, Musik für 6,5 Stunden Stummfilm. Das ist so viel wie für 2 Opern. Das Cello verleiht dem Muttermotiv weiche Fürsorglichkeit. Philipp, der Held, rasender Reporter des Mondial, wohnt noch immer bei Frau Mama. Wolfgang Hamm, Komponist und Dirigent, zugleich Produzent im Studio. Es sind die Aufnahmen mit 22 Musikern und 30 Instrumenten zu koordinieren. Den Hauptfiguren der zehnteiligen Vampire sind Klangfarben zugeordnet. Figuren tauchen auf und unter, Themen und Motive werden wiederholt oder variiert. Verfremdet wird populäre Musik vom Anfang des Jahrhunderts zitiert. Das Thema Philipps, des Helden, ist mit Trompete und Flügelhorn besetzt. Dazu Streichquartett.
Der Einstieg war ein bisschen wackelig zwischen Geigen und Trompeten. Ne? Tonstudio?
Zu Beginn der Arbeit geisterhafte Stille. Stumme, 75 Jahre alte Filmbilder warten auf neue Musik. Philipp hat sich schlafend gestellt. Als er aber auf den Vampir und die falsche Zofe schießt, weiß er nicht, dass in seinem Revolver Platzpatronen stecken. Drei Wochen dauern die Musikaufnahmen für die Vampire im Tonstudio. Und manchmal gibt's neben der Tages- noch eine Nachtschicht.
Das musst du natürlich filmen, das ist klar. Ja. Und was ist mit dem Klaus? Ja. Frag mal, ich bin bei dir falsch reingefahren, Melchiorstraße, Einbahnstraße.
Wie sehen denn die Augen unter der Brille aus?
Okay.
Oh. Ja, und wo ist der?
Und ich war jetzt bei dir in der Wohnung, da war keiner mehr.
Da war zu oder wie? Hat niemand aufgemacht sogar?
Stumm geklingelt und... Ich weiß nicht, vielleicht ist der jetzt mittlerweile mit Tag.
Richtig verstanden haben wir jetzt.
Der schillerndsten Figur der Vampire, Philipps ehemaligen Bürodiener Masamet, wurde dieses Englischhorn-Thema zugeeignet, begleitet von einem Saxophonquartett.
Einen Takt voraus, 5-5. 1, 2, 3.
Eine der schwierigsten Aufgaben für Musiker und Studioleute bestand darin, extreme Präzision beim Zusammenspiel gelegentlich mit Improvisation abwechseln zu lassen. In der Pause einmal demonstriert der Tubist mit Endlosatmung sein Didgeridoo, das Instrument der Aborigines, australischer Ureinwohner. Tiefes Blech. Die Posaunen sind den Ordnungskräften zugeteilt, den Polizisten, den Richtern, den Vollzugsbeamten.
Das ist ja nicht klappen.
Wir können einsteigen, wenn die dritte Posaune dazukommt, im Takt 4. Sehr gut. Wir nehmen jetzt gleich auf und ich gebe dir dann, ich sag dir dann ungefähr, wo wir sind. Jetzt sind wir das zweite System, Anfang.
Wie ein Magnet im Studio, der Computer mit dem chinesischen Drachenspiel oder mit dem Schach auf dem Bildschirm. Fast alle davon angezogen. Bass- und Kontrabassklarinette, eine Passacaglia, das Motiv des Großmeisters der Vampire, genannt Satanas. Als Priester verkleidet, feuert Satanas eine Kanone ab auf das Schiff und befreit so seine gefangen genommene Komplizin Irma Webb. Hin und wieder Korrekturen im letzten Moment oder eine Stimme fehlt oder eine Stimme muss noch rasch umgeschrieben werden für ein anderes Instrument.
Zweitakte D und dann Eintakte D
ja.
Und dann wieder Zweitakte D. Stimmt das?
Und dann, wie es da steht.
Sag mir doch mal die Noten.
Hier muss die erste Geige zwar nach Noten, aber im Rhythmus sehr frei spielen, den Bewegungen und den Blicken der Schauspieler folgen. Später bei der Mischung wird dieser giftige Klang weicher gemacht und er bekommt etwas Hall.
nur die zwei Takte 58, 59. Gut. Noch einmal 50. So soll es hinterher sowieso klingen, wie wenn das letzte Provinzort ist.
Achso,
1, 2, 3, 4.
Dramen ohne Worte nannte der Regisseur der Vampire Louis Feuillades seine Cine-Feuilletons von 1915-16. Fast jede Woche kamen damals neue Folgen von 10- oder 12-teiligen Serien in die Kinos und das Publikum erschien in Massen.
Noch ein Vorschlag, Klaus, doch so zu lassen, wie du es gemacht hast. Das heißt, erst ab dem untersten System in die Oktavierung zu gehen und vorher die Stimme genauso zu lassen.
Im Film ein Ballett auf der Bühne. Das aktuelle Drama ohne Worte, die Vampire. Aber bei offenem Vorhang stirbt die Tänzerin dann wirklich. Der geschenkte Ring war vergiftet. Eilig verlässt ein Herr mit Zylinder seine Loge. Die fertige Musik, abgemischt mit nur wenigen markanten, künstlichen Geräuschen, wird am Schneidetisch angelegt, synchron zu den Filmbildern. In neuem Gewande können die Vampire auf Sendung gehen.
Wenn sie schon verschwunden ist oder
wenn sie sozusagen, wenn man sie jetzt von innen sieht, noch später.
Ach so.
Vom Bild her.
Also fast 3 Sekunden.
Ja.
Hey Kameraden, schrieb Feuillades, der Regisseur 1922. Ich erfinde nichts, nur meine Drehbücher. Übrigens ist das Wesen unseres Metiers, das Leben betrachten zu können, das unsere Erfindungen immer überholt.
this film is about love, and it's not easy to speak about love or to put words about love. And I think for our story with Vincent, each day we would come in front of Michelangelo, we would say our lines, and he would direct us very precisely, saying, go slowly, don't look at him. To Vincent, smile a little bit, be more enthusiastic, oh, just a little, find a gesture. He was in fact very precise. One day I remember he was insisting on me having broader steps. He thought I was walking with too little steps. So just to say that even these little details were very important for him. The conditions were very good. We found a fantastic way to communicate. And even though we were not speaking the same language on the set, some Italian, some German, some English and some French, we all communicate with another language which exists, which is communication. And one of our great conditions was them, who really support us all and made this film happen. And so I hope you did like it too.
Working conditions were not that different from any other movie. There was a director, Michelangelo. There was a cameraman, Alfio Contini. There was a crew, there were actors. The only difference was, of course, that the director had a very slight handicap, which that he couldn't say much. Michelangelo does speak between 12 and 15 or maybe 20 words, and all very brief, like yes and no and soon and tomorrow and let's shoot. So the actors and the crew depended very much on Michelangelo's ability to convey his vision other than verbally. He did this a lot by drawing. Michelangelo, unfortunately, with the stroke, also lost the ability to write. So he cannot spell things anymore, although he can read, but he cannot write. So he was relying on drawings, on gestures, on taking the actors physically and showing them what he wanted to do. Michelangelo, from his first film on, never announced what he was going to do the day before. He never gave any indications to a cinematographer what his first setup would be, and he didn't change. He just shot the way he always shot. And when I asked Jean Moreau how it was working with Michelangelo, because he was one of the first actors he'd worked with, and how we should sort of envision the experience of working with a director who didn't speak, she said it doesn't make much of a difference. He didn't say anything anyway. So.
There is a scene in the beginning, for me it was really difficult, because in that scene, the girl I had to play, she has to explain a story about the soul. And actually, in the scene, she has just to catch the soul of the man who sits in front of her. And all what I wanted to do is to do it. I mean, to catch the soul of the man in front of me. And he just sent me two things, no, one thing, go slowly. And it was all what I need to know about the scene, because the seduction and goes only with only slow it can work. So it's true, he can speak a lot, but I think that actors, most of actors, they don't need too many explications. They just need to know that the director knows what to do, what he's doing, and I need le regard, the look, and he's got a great look, the most beautiful look, one of the most beautiful looking as director, and So I didn't miss his words, not at all.
He communicates by gestures and by the eyes, and sometimes if something wrong he gets angry. But even if sometimes it was a little bit confusing, I think we all made an effort. And I think everyone understood, and I think Michelangelo knew what he was doing completely. So that's why.
The first time I met Michelangelo and Wim Wenders, it was in Paris, and they just told me I would have this part, and I was very happy. I wanted to reassure...
We were happy.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to reassure them a bit, and I said to Wim when I left, I will try to find a way to this character. And Wim said to me, we will find a way to this character. And I thought it was so nice of him to say that, and so generous, just to make me feel at the start that I was not alone on this story. That of course I will try to do my best, but I wasn't alone. There were other people's, and we were doing this story together. And I'm not surprised now that Wim said to Michelangelo, I will also help you to do this story together, because it's a generosity that you have, Wim. And apart from the fact that you are a great director.
I function as backup. All the actors know that. Only for 2 hours during 10 weeks of shooting. One afternoon in Paris, Michelangelo got sick because he had a fever, and we had to finish a certain scene because the next day we had to move out of the set. So for once he asked me to direct a scene for him, and that was quite an easy scene. The rest of the 10 weeks of shooting he didn't need a backup director. He made it clear that I was his first choice. It was, of course, a crucial question that I wanted to ask Michelangelo myself. The answer was because, and that's as much as I got out of him. And I think after these 2 years, I can understand his choice a little better. And I think we have a certain affinity for certain things. For instance, for landscapes, for architecture, for painting.
Colors.
For colors, yes, to
light.
Michelangelo has other preferences that maybe I don't share, but I think also from the themes that his films have depicted, there's a certain affinity. So that's the one question I really, till the end of the shoot, I would have wanted to have a more precise answer from Michelangelo, which he could have only given if he had been able to speak. I've never been an assistant to anybody, so almost every day, of course, Michelangelo would do something completely opposite to what I would have done on the set. And sometimes you go there and you think, well, we have to shoot this, and this is Irene and Vincent. The only way to do this is to have them walk from there to there. Michelangelo would come to the set, and we were all waiting that he would have them go from there to there, and then he turned around, and 10 minutes later the tracks were on the next corner. And Michelangelo really from first to last day of shooting always invented on the spot. The lines between the episodes, so all the lines that form the voiceover of the director in the framework are all based entirely on Michelangelo's own notes. I didn't feel that, and Tonino Guerra, who wrote the script, agreed with me. We both didn't feel that this director character should be Michelangelo like in a biography. We felt this director should be somebody else. But at the same time, we felt that as he was tying everything together, we should give him Michelangelo's thoughts. And Michelangelo opened his drawers and pulled out books and books and books of notes he had written over 40 years. And Enrica, his wife, selected those that are now the narration in the film. So everything that the director thinks is Michelangelo's own words. There's a new generation working in Germany and everywhere else for whom the context with the history of cinema never has been as important. And for whom, especially as they start their work in a different age than I did, they start their work in the late consumer age, for whom it's a whole different battle than for my generation. When I was starting to make movies, I was able to make a film every year for 10 years, which was an incredible privilege. Today, if you're a young film director, you need 3 or 4 years to make your first film, and then, if you're lucky, you can make your second 3 or 4 years later. So I was extremely privileged, and I always did feel that I had been given lots of gifts from these masters, like Ozu, for instance, and also Michelangelo. And I was happy that I could return some of the gifts.
When I was born, 1921, July the 18th. I grew up in the Canary Islands, a little boy.
Why and when did you leave?
My father had a banana plantation.
So he was always living all the time?
My father's family is one of those families. They left England in 1742, I think. There was a plague. And the mother and father died, and there were 2 grown boys. I don't know whether this is true or not, but I've been told. And they left England. They sold everything, the 2 young men. And they sailed south, and one of them, my family, got off in Madeira, where they started making wine. They're still making wine, Madeira wine. Very good. I don't like it, but it's okay.
Leacock's Madeira.
Leacock's Madeira.
Really? Yeah.
The other one went on to Barbados and became much more successful, big sugar planters and slave owners. So when my daughter Victoria and I went to Barbados 3 years ago, we looked in the telephone book, and I counted 164 Leacocks in the telephone book. I think 160 of them are black. But we did meet the Jack Leacock and his wife and their nephew, and he told me about the family leaving England. And he's a surgeon. And the taxi driver, when I told him, showed me the scars where Dr. Leacock cut him open.
But in the English...
But they still stay English.
Yeah, they send the children to school. They send the children to be born in England. They send the children to school. Yeah, it's the tradition of this English expatriate. Yeah.
So my father was a guilty capitalist, feudal capitalist. He was terribly guilty because he was a socialist, and eventually he died a Mao Zedong communist. Upper-class English Mao Zedong communist. You understand those things. Exactly.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I think all over the world you got those. But anyway, I grew up in the Canaries and then went to school in England. When I was 8, you go to school in England. We went back and forth. We spent a lot of time. And then he got thrown out. The Spanish Civil War started in the Canaries. Franco was the governor of the Canaries, military governor. So my father was arrested with my stepmother, and they were deported. They went back to England. And then he didn't go back to the Canaries until 1960.
First to America and from there to Galapagos.
Yeah. I was on my way to the Galapagos. And then something happened I didn't expect. I fell in love with America. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And part of that had to do with the snobbery of England. In America, they don't give a good goddamn what accent you have. Because you might be Polish, Hungarian, who gives a shit?
At least on the East Coast.
Yeah, pretty much all over. They don't care. And for once in my life, I wasn't either in the Canaries, I was the landlord's son. In England, I was a toff. And for the first time in my life, I was just me. And so I loved it. So I decided to go after the Galapagos. I came back to America. And then I started to work while I was at Harvard studying. I ran the Film Society there. And when we ran silent films, you need a pianist. Did I tell you who we had? For $10 a night? Leonard Bernstein. It was very nice. He loved to do it.
You were 18 or 19?
Yeah, he was older than me. He was Koussevitzky's assistant at the Boston Symphony. And we did a production of Aristophanes' piece, the play I was talking about. And then he did, and I helped him, a production of Copland's Second Hurricane. It's supposed to be a high school opera. It's one of the most difficult operas in the world to do. And it was an interesting time. I remember this is the time of where Orson Welles did the theater production of Native Son. And I remember going to the opening of, it's funny, I went to Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. I thought it was boring. I still do.
What was the first town you came when you first entered America?
Huh?
What was your first impression of America? Which town did you?
I came to New York on August the 8th, 1938, on the Normandy, the greatest ship in the world. And as we steamed, it was hot, hot, hot. And I was an English boy with heavy coat on and flannel shirt. Oh! And as we passed the Statue of Liberty, this ferry boat, a side-wheeler, with thousands of black people on it. I'd never seen more than 2 or 3 black people. Thousands. And there was a big jazz band on the deck.
It was a Staten Island ferry, yeah?
No, it was not a ferry, it was a chartered boat. It was an outing, maybe some church or something. And the jazz band, as they passed the Normandy, struck up the Marseillaise in swing, and the whole ship went crazy. It was absolutely wonderful. And then my father and stepmother, they met me. It was hot, and so we drove from New York City, this fantastic future city. We drove to a house that they had just bought, a 200-year-old farmhouse.
Your parents bought this?
In northern New Jersey, in the hills, and had stone walls this thick, and no electricity, and no telephone, and an outhouse. So I went from a shit house.
His house.
And so I went from the future, boom, yeah, and these baskets of peaches.
But your parents weren't living there?
They were living there, yeah.
They moved from Canary Islands too?
Yeah, because Franco kicked them out in '36. So he went to England, then he went to America.
So you went to America together with your parents? Or
no, actually I went separate later, yeah. But they lived there until after World War II, and then he came back to Europe and worked with Gunnar Myrdal and UNRWA. reconstructing. And he was in Yugoslavia. And in the 1940s, he was a Stalinist. He was anti-Tito. It was interesting. I remember seeing him in Venice in '46.
He was a civil engineer.
Yeah, he was an engineering, agricultural engineer. He was very anti-Tito, and all his friends in Yugoslavia were Stalinists. That was weird.
So when you came to New York, you were quite alone. You were a young.
No, my family was there. Yes, my mother had died when I was 12, and that always makes a difference. Then you're an independent. So I spent a lot of time with the people, like my school friends. I spent a lot of time with Bertrand Russell's family, their family, and with G. Moore, and we were very snob. Molto elegant.
My idea is that it must be a big impression to be a young man coming alone, nobody else, you know, coming to America, to another continent.
Well, I had trouble at Harvard at first. My first year at Harvard, I mostly got to know Europeans. There were many refugees, people from Germany, especially Czechoslovakians, and Americans. I had trouble understanding them, but I got over that. Then I started to work in the holidays as. Well, did you see my first film as cameraman. I worked for Frontier Films. We were all communists. And I worked on Native Land as assistant to the assistant editor during the vacations, the holidays, in the summer and stuff. And then in 1940, I was cameraman for a film on folk music in Virginia. For a Hungarian director, Geza Karpathy. And
what was the film called?
To Hear My Banjo Play. Didn't finish it. Nobody was interested in folk music during World War II, so it wasn't finished until after the war.
Is the film still existing?
Yeah. It's not very good, but it's got some nice. I used infrared film in it, some of it. It's interesting. And it was shot in sync sound. You can't do a film on folk music without sound. So that was shot with a 35mm Bell & Howell big camera, and then we were up in the hills where there was no electricity. So we had a station wagon full of big batteries, and that gave us 120 volts DC. Then we had a motor and a dynamo, and you converted the DC to AC, and you had a frequency meter, hertz meter, to get the right frequency. And then we had a 35mm optical sound camera, separate from the picture camera. And you had to get that running, and then this one running, and then the clapsticks, and you couldn't play back. You had to send it to be developed, and get a print, and then go to a theater to hear it.
Running big risk.
But that was the only way. So that was the beginning. Then I worked as assistant editor on Native Land with Paul Strand, Lou Hurwitz and people. And I never really liked them. The documentaries they were making were all acted and very symbolic. The most left-wing genius of that time was considered to be Dovchenko. In English, it was called Frontier, the Dovchenko film about the Far East, and this man, he's a good communist, and he knows his friend is a traitor, so he turns his friend in and was executed. And everybody thought that was wonderful. I remember that. That was their favorite film. That gave me a little trouble. Then I saw Alexander Nevsky and my friend Jay Leiter. We had big arguments about that.
So those prints were available in
Oh, yes. Heavens, yes. People say, wasn't it difficult to work in film in America if you were a communist? I said it was impossible to work in film in America if you weren't a communist.
changed later?
No, not really. In Hollywood, a few people. Documentary was always.
You think the
McCarthy
only affected the Hollywood scene?
In fact, yeah, really only. And McCarthy wasn't that wrong. Some of the Hollywood 10 were shits. Today I don't blame Kazan at all. That's why I left the party, because I had to do with some of those people. Herbert Biberman, who made Salt of the Earth, what a dreadful film. They wanted me, that's in my article. I deal with that.
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah, that's not a nice story.
You were asked to collaborate?
It wasn't that. We had trained these black people to work in the Harlem School, and the party wanted us to persuade them to work on Salt of the Earth, which would have meant they would have been blacklisted. And I said, no, no, no. They just want to work in the industry. They're not political. You know, communists always love to go down with everybody they can take with them. And I said, no way. And we had a big fight. So that was the end for me.
Let's just go back. Where was it where you made your film club? It was in Boston? In Harvard?
Yeah. I was already there. Every university has a film society.
So you run this film society, or just you were one of the?
No, I ran it. Yeah. It's very easy to run a film society.
Well, if it's so easy to get hold of prints.
Oh yes, we got them from the Museum of Modern Art and stuff. And it was all political. So it was the play that we did, the Aristophanes' piece. This was, remember, against helping Europe, helping Britain, helping the war against Hitler. This was after we were in favor of peace until the day the Soviet Union was invaded. Then we did another change. Change is very easy. It is inconceivable to me today. When I read that history, was I that stupid? Was I that dishonest?
You think you were?
It's hard to say. It's, you know, I didn't make the mistakes that Joris Evans made. He made some much bigger mistakes. Joris Evans was paid.
You never made a communist?
No, I never made a communist film. And then when I worked for Flaherty after the war, Flaherty knew I was a communist. He used to kid me. I'd come away, I'd go for a trip, I'd come back, he'd say, oh, the FBI called out looking for it. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't that stupid.
But one can only decide what to do from what he has learned up to this moment. So it's always as easy to look back.
Look, no, what's difficult is not to look back. What's difficult is to understand why we rejected. The information was there. George Orwell didn't make these mistakes. Lots of people didn't make these mistakes. But we did. We were guilty. Victor Gollancz, the New Statesman, the Guardian, all these papers. We were in the evidence was there, and we didn't believe it. Same with China. Jean-Luc Godard. Look at Les Chinois. What a ludicrous film. Ludicrous. Believe that. Because it's no different from people who believe in the absolute, the Trinity. So then you have to ask these, for me, I have to ask these questions. How could I have been so blind? Because it was easy.
Well, you're talking about an experience that of course has to frighten me, because there is always a chance to do the wrong thing, to decide wrong, go the wrong way.
All the people I know were delighted when the Shah was kicked out by Khomeini.
We knew what happened.
had to,
We
went
know
to learn.
now, but we didn't know.
Today is a little bit embarrassing. Monica and I both felt that Mr. Flaherty thought he was making a sound film. And he made it because there are conversations in it. It's all there. And so she didn't change a single frame, and we recorded sound, and then she did much more. I was lazy at the time. She went on and on. She is, yeah. It's now a sync sound film.
It's wonderful.
It's a dialogue, it's all in Samoan. It's absolutely wonderful.
It's worth
and it's brought
traveling.
that film to life again.
You think it changed? It's a different version.
No, it's not. It hasn't changed anything, but it's come to life.
Yeah.
Now, because he used to show it with every night. They would, or once a week, they would screen it, the rushes. And when Monica and I went back to Samoa with the original film, no sound, and we screened it in the village. Now, if you show Moana in Augsburg, every
Respect.
Respect. Oh, yeah. But you show it in Samoa. We showed it in the village where it was shot. 50 years later, the little boy in Moana was our host, and he did a running commentary. Every member of the village outside with the moon. It was gorgeous. My sheet. And they roared with laughter, not derisive laughter. The film is full of little tiny jokes. So when he screened it, the rushes, they all saw the jokes in it. They're tiny.
They understood.
Yeah. And so when you add sound, for instance, there's a scene where Moana holds up a vine cut from a tree. And he's running, the juice is pouring out, and he's running it into his girlfriend's mouth. And then he moves it so it goes up her nose. Well, most people don't notice this, but the Samoans have all done this to their girlfriends. And she's giggling. And when you see it with the sound, it's just lovely. It's full of play and it's cheerful. But Flaherty always would talk, when he talked to me about filmmaking, which wasn't often, it would be late at night when we were finished work, he always talked about Moana. And to me, that's where he worked out his theory as to how you construct a sequence, how you tell a little tiny story, how you use the close-up to conceal, how you use different lenses, how how to tell a story, which is a sequence. And Moana is made up of a whole series of perfect sequences. So in our film, each sequence is done differently. Some we use zoom, some we don't use zoom, some we use different kinds of approaches to sound. Some sequences are just a single shot.
Small stories.
Some, but they're all little stories.
Chain.
Yeah, and some of them are accidents. When Valerie shot the sequence of the cat eating the egg, she didn't mean the dog to do it. The dog came in and knocked her over.
Yeah, felt
very rude.
When we were shooting in that class with the pupils, with the students, you made a polite critic on us, how we filmed. Would you give us some hints how you say the documentarist should behave with the camera, how he should be?
The main problem that most of us get into is that we have an idea of what it is we're filming. And when the idea doesn't happen that way, we get worried by it. Instead of what I think we should do is we should know that our idea is probably wrong and that we're going to end up making a different film.
So you mean to be open?
To be open to what happens instead of to what should happen.
Keep shooting if something bizarre happens. No panic. Just.
Yeah. I remember I was filming with Bob Drew the ascent of a balloon carrying two astronomers to the upper atmosphere. It was in South Dakota. And we'd been weeks and weeks and weeks of preparation. And I was filming just before takeoff. And suddenly I heard this weird noise behind me. I turn around. The balloon has collapsed. That's not part of the story. Wasn't supposed to do that. So you turn the camera off. Idiot.
That means to be ready.
No, I turned it off. No, it collapsed.
You turned it off?
Yeah.
Silly boy.
Dum, dum, dum. It's very often, for instance, there's a famous scene, we showed it here to the students, where the politicians are eating the steaks. The steak scene. Have you seen that? Oh, it's wonderful. All these important Republican presidential, they're running, they're going to elect a president. And the waiter has this thing with all these steaks on it. And they're well done, medium well, medium rare, rare, very rare. And they get them all mixed up. Now, they were talking about money. I had been filming them talking about money. And you can see the camera. I go on trying to get them talking about money. And it's only just before the end that I realize that what was happening. And it's, the hell with money.
The steaks.
These steaks, I mean, it's such a ridiculous scene. Robert Redford he was going to make a film called The Candidate. So he asked us if he could copy the scene. He didn't need to ask us, but he copied the scene in the film. It's not nearly as funny, but it's but always being open to something going wrong.
I would like to go back to compare 35 millimeters, 16 millimeters nowadays video.
I've always gone in the wrong direction. Right.
What is for you the difference in between the audiences, different audiences? Once it's a cinema, it's 200 people.
Okay. Well, we have very rarely been in cinemas. I mean, let's face it, Louisiana Story was a disaster. The only time Flaherty made it in cinemas was with Nano. So, not really. In Mount of Iron, we looked at it again. It's not a very good film. His technique didn't work there. He never really got close to them. Not like Moana. For me, there's only one great sequence in Mount of Iron, is the last sequence, the storm. He never got to feel the people, I don't think. Nor in Louisiana Story. It's the only one he really was close to the people was obviously in Nanook. There are all sorts of jokes in Nanook. Who is the lady in the igloo? There's an extra lady. That always used to interest me. But what were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So once, I mean, when Pennebaker made Monterey Pop, it was lovely to go to the theater. We used to go and look at the line around the theater, you know, $4, $8, $12. It's lovely. No, but seriously, the feeling of people laughing and enjoying it is lovely. Television has none of that. Television is a disaster. So now we depend on, the only place you get an audience is festivals, and they're a very difficult audience because everybody's pushing their own film. And we show it at home on cassette. That can be very exciting. When you go on television, for me, it's always been a disaster.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I've said it 100 times. My father-in-law, it's like dropping a feather in the Grand Canyon and waiting for the echo. You go on television, they say, 15 million people saw your film. But you walk down the street and you meet a friend, and they, oh, no, it was yesterday? Oh, shit, I thought it was tomorrow. Yeah,
so it would mean more to you to meet just one who has seen your film on TV instead of knowing...
Sometimes, but now and then, but it does after a long time. You start meeting people that saw it. That's nice. But it has nothing, when you finish a film, for TV. We took it to the TV. No, we didn't. Our producer gave it to them.
Yeah, nothing happened.
We called up, and they said, "Oh, I'll call you back." We didn't. Weeks go by. Nothing happens. If I call up the Channel 7, they'll say, "And what is your name? And how do you spell that? And what do you want to see him about?" You're a non-person. It's not meant to be cruel, but it is.
Much experience in working with TV stations.
Yeah, I made a film for TV station in public television in New York. It was a 15-minute film. It's a lovely film. They asked me to make it with George Plimpton. It's called Hickory Hill. They looked at it. There were 3 of them. They made 2 international phone calls during the screening, talking to each other. They left. I never heard from them again. They never ran the film. They never paid for it. They never told me it was awful. It's a lovely film.
You don't have a print of that?
Yeah, I have one in Paris. Is it here? We have it here?
Showing it
Hickory Hill, yes. It's a lovely film. It's a completely stupid film. It's about a children's pet show at Robert Kennedy's house. And half of the children are Kennedys, of course. It's very funny. And a cat runs up a tree and won't come down. And a dog pees on a lady's back. Good subject.
What about your films in general? It's a mass of films you made.
But I haven't. I have very few films. I don't own any of them. The only film I own is Canary Bananas.
So all the other films are owned by TV stations, or who has the films?
What's our new one? We owned...
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah, we own a little bit of it. 10% or 20%.
Is there any...
But now we've got a new company. Montevideo Productions.
There's one in Cologne as well.
Oh, no, really?
Oh, yeah?
Oh, scheiße. I remember I was in China at the end of World War II, and the British made a film of the life of Handel.
Yeah?
You know that British think Handel was English. They really do, I swear to God. He's portrayed as an Englishman. And he looks out of the window and he looks at the stars. And up comes the Alleluia chorus. So that was the end of the film, with the Alleluia chorus, the Messiah. And so I found myself, after the film, surrounded by Chinese, all singing the Alleluia chorus. It was very strange. I don't understand movies.
Back to your films, is there any place in the world where those films are collected?
No, I'm not even sure you see that. They're the Drew films. Those are Drew films. I worked on them. I was an important part of it. But they're Drew films. And then there are the Pennebaker films. You know, I think of Hickory Hill as mine, same with Jazz Dance. It's Roger Tilton's film. I did a lot of working on other people's films.
Right, but there should be some archive or what else. What about Jean Rouge? There were several prints.
They have a few. They have a film that they show every year as being mine. It's not only not mine, I've never even seen it. But he goes in the thing, Richard Leacock. It's something to do with breaking the sound barrier. It was made by Drew, but has nothing to do with me. I love those kinds of mistakes.
So no one...
Do you know there's a very important book in Germany or Europe on film makers, and there's a picture of a black lady, and underneath it says Shirley Clark. Shirley Clark is a nice white Jewish girl. But in Europe, forever now, she's black. Because she made a lot of films about blacks. Which I think is very further. I think she's very happy. She changed color.
But one should take care of your films. Okay, I'm an archivist, that's my problem. But seeing your film Queen of Apollo, for example, one should take care of it.
Oh, it's Pennebaker has that. He owns that. Does he own it?
No, you own it.
I own that one, yeah. I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, I do.
Why didn't Jean Rouge take this print and try to preserve it to...
They don't. The Cinematheque is not an archive. It's a film library. I don't think they have an archive. Very few people have an archive.
But they do preserve films, reconstruct films.
No, they do some reconstructing, but I don't think they really preserve them. This copy of The Chair is chewed to pieces.
There's bits missing. Yeah.
Yeah, pieces cut out of it. It's a disaster.
Is there still a complete print somewhere?
Drew has.
Yeah, Drew has a...
Drew has a real archive.
Yeah. He showed it to us.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
What about the Queen City thing? You think
That Pennebaker owns that. Oh, there's a copy. No, he doesn't have a print of Queen City, USA. It's very slightly different, but it's. I left the only print of that.
So it's the
I left in Europe.
That's the only one.
There was only one print ever of that.
So if we don't succeed, we just talk that over. If we don't succeed to find that print, it will be gone.
Yeah, it's. I would love to find it, but I can't remember whether I left it in Prague or in Leipzig. I just don't remember. Remember, I was drinking then.
If it was in Prague, it was with private persons, not with the...
I was lecturing at the school there.
Oh. The Prague Film School?
Yeah. Maybe I don't know, who do you know there?
Well, it should be possible to have some contacts at least to the Prague archive.
Sure. I bet you know who was there then? Was...
Joris.
No, the writer.
Kundera.
Kundera. I think he was there then.
At that time?
Yeah, it was 1963, I think, or 64.
So it should be possible to figure out that it's still...
I'm trying to think, when did I go to Poland? I have very vague memory of what I did. That was the year I was in England all the time. But
it would be a pity if it was lost.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always wanted to find that.
Well, one should try to find that print. That leads me to the question from this morning, the preservation thing. I was always thinking about that. Being an archivist, your task is to collect things, to preserve things. Mm-hmm. In my case, it's film and information about how films came into existence. And sometimes I wonder what I'm doing, if this is necessary, if it's worth doing. And mostly I say, okay, it's worth, because otherwise other people have no chance to see what people made with this medium.
Yeah, I think it's important, but as far as I'm concerned, it's all going to go into digital storage.
Well, I'm sure too that's.
But what do you? Yeah. But what do you do about selection? I know that people don't want to talk about selection because it's a problem. But non-selection is also a problem. If I had been in charge of the archive, I would have said, "Forget it. It's stupid." Right? I wouldn't have preserved.
At the time, you wouldn't.
Yeah, at the time I would have been a good communist looking forward. I would have not preserved it. So it's difficult.
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
You can't be sure what you're doing at the moment, whether it's right in 5 years' time. So in Germany, it's not only the documentaries that haven't been archived or badly archived. It's also the films I think most of the people saw at, let's say, in the 30s, when they went just for pleasure to movie theater.
Yeah.
It's only the...
That's a very interesting problem.
What they call the art of cinema.
Okay, then there's the problem, for instance. Everybody was, in my generation, was brought up to know that Hollywood was trivial, unimportant, escapist. The Soviet cinema, Now, we look back today. Hollywood did far better than Soviet cinema. I mean, even if you want to be social-minded, look at I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, made by Mervyn LeRoy, who in the books is spat upon by contemporary writers. They don't want to discuss Mervyn LeRoy. Mervyn LeRoy, to me, is one of the most interesting directors and producers that Hollywood ever produced. Much more interesting than John Hawkes or Hitchcock.
But to write about that, or to be an historian, you need the films.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are writing about films now.
They haven't seen them. Yeah. It's like the people who say that Don Quixote was a bad film. I'm a Fugitive from a Chain Gang was almost destroyed because it was politically so hot. And then there are wonderful films that are ignored, like Roxy Hart. Do you know Roxy Hart? The Ginger Rogers? Oh, it's one of my favorite. Again, political satire. But the left never recognized anybody but themselves. And the left dominated the critics. They never recognized, for instance, the wonderful political satire of who made the Lady Eve?
Preston Sturges.
Preston Sturges. His wonderful political satires. In Roxy Hart, where she's a gun mole in a Chicago prison that takes a murder rap to get the publicity, and she never, end to end of the film, she's chewing gum, her jaw. And every time the photographers come into the courtroom, the judge streaks across. Absolutely wonderful film.
So this was cut down.
Well, it's to me, Hollywood gets tremendous credit. They weren't pompous idiots, but there are films that are very real.
Do you want to see your audience? 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Should we go see them? Good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. God, I have a girlfriend.
Well, I know you want to see your audience, so...
Do you know what the singular of audience is? It's always so strange. An audience.
Oh, that's one person?
One person. Very
Maybe
seldom.
that's what's left.
Very seldom used, yes. We go back, see if there's anybody left.
To see if there's an audience.